Welcome. Good morning. Welcome to the first policy roundtable on legal and economic barriers to food waste prevention and reduction. This is a meeting organized by the FOODRUS project, and we are really happy to actually have received a lot of registration for the meetings, within Europe and also outside of Europe. We welcome the ones of you that are part of the advisory board member of the advisory board of FOODRUS. We are ACR Plus. We are a partner of the FOODRUS project. We are a European network of local and public authorities working on sustainable resources management, and we are based in Brussels. My name is Agnese Boccalon. I work as a senior project manager at ACR Plus in the area of sustainable food systems. And I'm here today with my colleague Lauriane Noiro, who's working with me on the FOODRUS project and on the other projects related to food systems. And this work is also based on input that was provided by another colleague of ours, which is currently on maternity leave, but she contributed to the activities at the beginning of the project. Her name is Nuria Cases Isampere. So some housekeeping rules for the meeting. Please mute your microphones during the presentation. The meeting is being recorded. So we will make available the recording afterwards. If you have questions, please formulate them at the end of the presentation or use the chat meanwhile. The bulk of the discussion today will be on the second part of the activities, when we will have an interactive session on the Miro board. So our preference will be to keep the discussion in that part and not much on the initial presentation we will show you shortly. What is the agenda of the meeting today? We have 3 parts. The first part, as I was mentioning, is an introduction to the policy landscape around the challenge of food losses and food waste prevention. And then we have an interactive session which will occur via the tool, the Miro board, which we will split in 2 parts with a small break around 11. And then we will have a final wrap-up session towards the end of the meeting. So just to set a bit the base of why we are doing this work and where the works originates. This policy analysis we are running, and some of the results we will present today are part of activities within the FOODRUS project. The FOODRUS project is a Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation project. Is a project funded under the Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Program. We started activities in November 2020, and we are about to close the project in April next year. We are overall 27 partners working on this project, and we are representing different countries in Europe. Within our project, we have 3 pilots, and each pilot focuses on a specific food value chain sector. We have the Danish pilot that focuses on meat and fish value chain. We have the Slovak pilot focusing on bread value chain, and we have the Spanish pilot focusing on salad, and specifically freshly packed salads. what are the aims of FOODRUS in a nutshell? We want to provide tools and knowledge to improve the resilience of local food systems in Europe. We want to do that by developing and testing different solutions that can actually create this resilience. Some of the activities we are currently working on and results will come shortly are, for example, the preparation of an innovation catalog on food losses and waste valorization opportunities, looking at the upcycling of food surpluses from businesses. We are currently working on the development of a catalog on sustainable food systems, best practices, which were identified by project partners. We have developed 8 different modules of e-learning materials that can be used by different food value chain actors. For awareness raising and knowledge sharing about the food waste challenge. And we are developing IT tools that can support the quantification and prevention of food waste. How do we want to create impact with the activities developed in the project? We have, as partner of the project, 5 associated regions, and we have 3 non-partner associated regions that were engaged at the beginning of the project activities. And within these associated regions, we aim to develop replication roadmaps for action addressing the food waste challenge. You can see in the map the 3 pilots, Spain, Denmark, and Slovakia, and the 8 associated regions, which spread among Austria, Bulgaria, Greece, Hungary, Romania, Spain, Netherlands, and Netherlands. We have 2 regions in the Netherlands. So this is where the activities of the policy assessment come from within the context of the project. And why are we working on the policy analysis on food losses and food waste? I think for most of us, the answer is pretty clear, but just to recap a bit on what are the interlinkages between policies, food waste, and actual practices is we have policies at European, national, or subnational levels that actually shape behavior. They shape behavior of consumers, but they shape behavior of business actors that operate throughout the food value chain. And this behavior, whether individual or a company level, determines the practice. It determines the way food is produced. It determines the way food is purchased, sold, procured in public procedures, the way it is consumed and disposed of. And the current way this practice is taking place is actually generating a lot of waste. I guess all of you know that in Europe and in the world more in general, about 1/3 of all food that is produced is wasted. And this means that there is an unacceptable dispersal of limited resources like water, energy, inputs for agricultural production. So we want to focus on policies because they have a power to correct this behavior and the practices of the business operators, and it's a way to lead to efficiency gains in how we are managing resources. Today we are hosting the first policy workshop, and the focus is on the barriers to food waste prevention and reduction from a legal and from an economic perspective. The aim of this assessment on the barriers is to understand what the barriers are and to describe what are the drivers behind it. And by knowing the drivers, we will later on formulate some recommendations on improvements to the legal framework that is behind the management of resources and of food. And this recommendation session will be discussed in a second policy roundtable towards the end of November, beginning of December this year. We call it policy roundtable, and we mix it with policy workshop because initially it was formulated during the proposal development phase. It was conceived as a roundtable. Today we are mixing elements of a roundtable and of a workshop because we, on one hand, we want to present you some of the results, and on the other hand, we want to have all of you on the table to discuss the results themselves. So what has been the process through which we identified the barriers? We started from a literature review. We looked at the key European policies on waste, on food waste, on sustainable food systems, farm to fork strategy, and we tried to identify key aspects of these policies that could influence behavior and practices. We looked at the results of the findings of projects that preceded us. We look at the national legislation and at sector-specific reports and guidelines that business operators could have adopted with regard to sustainable food management. After running this literature review, we engaged with the pilots of the project and with the associated regions. And we asked them to identify the barriers, the key barriers in their specific context, national and regional context. We later ran a survey, an EU survey that was addressed to business operators of the food value chain. And we, at a later stage, we integrated the information that was collected through additional learnings that came from the webinar series on sustainable food systems innovation that were run within the FOODRUS project. What is the perspective that we took for the assessment? As you can imagine, there are different angles from which you can look at food waste. We wanted to have a quite comprehensive understanding of the barriers occurring on food waste prevention and reduction, but we also wanted to have some sort of detail of identifying the barriers within specific stages of the food value chain. This is why we tried to differentiate between the different stages and identify barriers that were specific to one or more than these stages. This is why we took an approach where we looked, we started from primary production up to the wholesale and retail level. Primary production in terms of farming practices, let's say, has a smaller dimension as compared to the other stages because we didn't have many partners involved in primary production activities. The second thing we wanted to the second perspective we wanted to adopt, it was a prevention perspective rather than just a reduction perspective. So preventing food surplus to become food waste, because when we talk about reduction, we are already talking about food waste. When we talk about prevention, we are still in the borderline between food surpluses and food waste. What we did not include in the assessment, as the scope of the work on food waste, understanding of drivers of food waste is pretty broad. We had to make some choices. We excluded an analysis of the legislation on imported goods. We wanted to focus on goods that are produced and commercialized within Europe. We did not look in depth into the food safety regulation, and we did not really take an end consumer approach to the issue, because we think that at the moment there is a lot of focus on the end consumer and not enough focus on the other stages of the food value chain. So this is just a recap why it is important to address food waste challenges. Basically, it is first of all ethically unacceptable that nowadays we still have around 11% of the world population which is food insecure. This is not a situation that is only this is a situation that is also affecting Europe, as we have about 30 million European citizens that are not able to access on a daily basis a healthy and nutritious diet. We know it's environmentally unsustainable. Food production requires a lot of resources for water, soils, energy inputs, and it affects to a large extent the current biodiversity loss that we are experiencing. It has a high climate change impact, with 24% of greenhouse gases global emission coming from food production, and it is financially not viable. The last 2022 statistics from Eurostat estimated that the annual loss due to food waste in Europe accounts to 130 billion euros. We want to address food waste policies also because we see that European member states, and here are only some example of them, did take initiatives, especially after the definition and the agreement on the Sustainable Development Goals, to take action on food waste. The fact is that the coordination process is a bit slow, and each country, especially at the beginning, now a bit less, with more policy development at EU level, had to start developing legislation by themselves. So this is the food waste hierarchy. And the ideal situation is that there is a lot of focus, and a lot of the food surpluses goes into reuse or prevention of food waste generation, with less preferable options having lower flows of food waste. What's the reality, however, is that still we have a lot of food fully eatable from a food safety point of view that goes into energy recovery, disposal, or recycling. And this is why we really need bold policies development on food waste prevention. The latest statistics from the European Commission on the results of the first collection of food waste data at the level of the single EU member states provide this overview of the current status of food waste generation in the EU. This translates in a distribution of food waste generation that looks like this. Yet we have to consider the footnote that is provided by Eurostat in this figure. If we look a bit more into detail on the data on which this snapshot is provided, we understand why we really need to invest a lot of time, money, and competencies on food waste prevention. This is the table on which the data are based, provided by the European Statistical Office. And what you can see is that out of a population of nearly 450 million inhabitants in the European Union, we have nearly half of the population with 10 countries that provided estimated data on food waste. This represents about more than half of the European population. If you look a bit deeper into the data, you will see that on top of the 10 countries that provided estimated data, 5 countries actually use different definition of food losses and waste and applied a different boundary condition on where the food loss or the food waste occurred. Lastly, we have a number of countries representing about 33 million inhabitants in Europe, which were unable to provide the data on food waste. So this actually gives an overview of how severe is the deficiency in information about the food waste and food loss generation. And of course, you cannot measure, you cannot manage what you don't know, and this is why we call for more bold and strict regulation on food waste. So I took a few more minutes than expected. This is the end of the first part of the presentation. I can open the floor to some questions if you have, or some comments, and then we would like to move to the interactive session on the Miro board, where we will, on the one hand, show you what are the barriers we have identified, and on the other, start an open discussion with you on whether these barriers are present or not in your countries, what is your experience about how they have been solved, if they have been, and move on to the activities on the Miro. So I open the floor if there is any question. I'm not able to see the chat, so please take the floor. Is there something from the chat?
No, not from what I can see.
Okay. If Nisha, would you like to take the floor?
Well, just shortly, I think it's a very nice overview that you just presented, and I also agree very much with your approach. So I'm curious up to the session.
Thanks. Okay, so if there are no questions, I will show you just a few extra slides on what we intend to do with the Miro session. This is a bit the overview of the two activities we will focus on during the next 1 hour, 1 hour, 15 minutes. And we would like, with the results from the Miro, to answer 3 main questions. The first question is, if the identified barriers that we have found through all the literature review, the communication with the pilots, with the associated regions and the food value chain actors, are representative of the situation in your country. Meaning, are these barriers still persisting? and if so, how relevant they are in addressing food waste reduction and prevention challenges. And if the barrier is not there anymore and it has been solved via either local national legislation or via soft laws with guidelines or code of conduct practices of specific food value chain sectors, how this has been accomplished. The second activity of the MIRO will be the check on the barriers we have identified and collecting input from your side on barriers that we might have overseen and not included in the overview.